The man looked up from the mop and smiled at the stranger who walked in. He had the kind of smile that made you feel like you'd known him 20 years. "What can I help you find today, friend?" The stranger, a man in a pressed suit, holding a manila folder, didn't answer right away. He just stared. Then, slowly, he set a photograph on the counter. A magazine cover. Forbes. A headline that read, "The Iron King, Walter Hale and the $4.2 billion empire." The man with the mop looked at the photo, then back at the stranger. "I think you've got the wrong fella," he said, still smiling. But the stranger shook his head. "Mr. Hale, that is you, and we've been looking for you for 8 months. Before we go any further, if this kind of story moves you, hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. It means the world. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Walter Hale had built one of the largest industrial shipping empires in the country, starting with nothing but a pair of dock workers' hands and a stubbornness that never quit. Steel, logistics, freight. By the time he was 60, his name was on warehouses in 14 states. But the thing nobody knew, the thing that didn't make the magazine covers, was that Walter Hale was exhausted. His wife, Eleanor, had passed 3 years before. His daughter, Claire, hadn't spoken to him in 2. So, on a Tuesday in October, Walter Hale left his harborfront home in Maine, climbed aboard his 22-foot sailboat, and pointed it at the open water. He told no one where he was going. He didn't know himself. Then, the storm hit. The Coast Guard searched for 4 days. They found the sailboat, capsized, 30 miles off the Cape. They never found Walter Hale. His name hit the news, Billionaire missing at sea. The board of directors convened. Lawyers began drafting documents. And somewhere, washed up on the shore of a small fishing town in Nova Scotia, a man with no wallet, no phone, and no memory opened his eyes. He didn't know his name. He didn't know where he came from. He didn't know he was worth $4 billion. The fisherman who found him was named Gus Tremblay. Gus was 72, practical man, didn't ask too many questions. He drove the stranger to the local clinic, sat with him while the doctor checked him over, and when it was determined the man had suffered a significant head injury and a severe case of retrograde amnesia, meaning he remembered nothing of his past life, Gus just nodded slowly. "Well," Gus said, "you gotta be called something." The man thought for a moment. Nothing surfaced, just fog. "Walt," he said finally. He didn't know why. It just felt right. Gus let Walt stay in the spare room above his garage. The town, Port Adair, population 800, absorbed him the way small towns sometimes absorb strays. Carefully at first, then fully. Within 2 weeks, Walt was helping out at Henderson's Hardware, sweeping floors, stocking shelves, fixing things that were broken. He was, it turned out, remarkably good at fixing things. He didn't know where the knowledge came from. He just knew that when something was broken, he could usually see how to make it whole again. The hardware store owner, a widow named Rita Henderson, paid him in cash and let him work as many hours as he wanted. He worked a lot of hours. At night, Walt would sit by the window in Gus's spare room and try to remember. There was nothing there, just the sense, vague, haunting, that somewhere, somehow, there was a life he had left behind. He just couldn't find it. And in the meantime, he went to sleep, and in the morning, he got up, and he fixed things that needed fixing. For the first time in a very long time, though he wouldn't have been able to tell you that, something in him was quiet. Months passed. Walt settled into Port Adair the way a stone settles to the bottom of a river, gradually, completely. He learned people's names, their habits, their small dramas and quiet joys. He fixed the broken fence outside the elementary school without being asked.
He helped the Brennan family re-roof their barn after a storm took half of it. He showed up at the community hall on Friday evenings and played cards badly but enthusiastically. Nobody knew where he'd come from. The town had quietly decided that was his business. But something was happening to Walt that he couldn't explain. The fog in his mind was still there, but around the edges, in the early morning, or the moment just before sleep, something would surface. A flash, a word, a face he couldn't quite see, a woman's voice. He didn't know who Claire was, but the name left a weight in his chest every time it came. And 800 miles away, someone named Claire was destroying herself trying to find him. Claire Hale had not spoken to her father in 2 years. They'd had the kind of falling out that families specialize in, slow, painful, full of words that cut both ways and no one ever took back. She had been furious at him for missing her mother's final weeks, too focused on the business, too stubborn to stop. She'd told him she was done. He hadn't fought her on it, and then he'd disappeared.
She'd hired 3 private investigation firms. She'd posted notices in coastal communities from Massachusetts to Newfoundland. The Coast Guard had officially declared Walter Hale lost at sea 7 months in. Claire refused to sign the paperwork. The PI's voice was careful, measured. "We can't be certain, but the build matches, the approximate age matches, and this man appeared in the town with no history, exactly in the window your father went missing." Claire picked up the photograph. Her hands were shaking. "Get me on a plane," she said. Walt looked up. "What can I help you find today, friend?" The man set the photograph on the counter. The magazine, Forbes, Walter Hale, $4.2 billion. Walt picked it up. He looked at the man in the photograph. He looked at his own reflection in the store window. He looked back at the photograph. "I think you've got the wrong fella," he said, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. The PI took a step forward. "Sir, I work for your daughter. Her name is Claire. She's been looking for you for 8 months. She's outside right now." Walt set the photograph down very carefully. He walked around the counter. He pushed open the door of the hardware store. They stood 30 feet apart. Neither one moved. The wind came off the harbor. A fishing boat horn called from the dock. And then, without warning, without ceremony, Walter Hale's face crumpled. He didn't remember everything, but he remembered her. He held on to her like a man who had almost drowned, because he had. The doctors came, the specialists, the neurologists. Walter Hale's memories returned gradually, in pieces, over weeks, some completely, some in fragments that never quite fit back together. He remembered the business, the deals, the empire. He remembered Eleanor. He remembered the argument with Claire, every word of it. He remembered the boat, the storm, the water closing over him. The lawyers needed decisions. The board needed direction. $4 billion doesn't wait. Everyone assumed Walter Hale would come back, put the suit back on, sit back down at the head of the table. But Walt surprised them. He appointed a trusted COO to run daily operations. He restructured his will. He established a foundation in Eleanor's name, funded generously, focused on small coastal communities. And then he called Rita Henderson and asked if she still needed someone at the hardware store. He didn't give up his wealth. He didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. But he had learned something in 8 months of mopping floors and hauling crates and eating dinner at other people's tables, something no boardroom had ever taught him. That a life is not measured in what you accumulate. It's measured in what you show up for. He showed up for Claire. He showed up for Port-Adair. He showed up for the person he'd been before the money, the dock worker who fixed things with his hands and found satisfaction in small, honest work. The world thought Walter Hale was lost at sea. He wasn't.
He had just finally found his way back to shore. They say money changes people, but sometimes, if you're lucky, losing everything shows you who you actually are. Walter Hale forgot he was a billionaire, and in forgetting, he remembered what mattered. If this story moved you, leave a comment below telling me what you think Walt discovered that money could never buy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you in the next story.